Hey guys, Manga here, back again with a new video on how to draw the face from below, giving 10 art tips and using My Hero Academia characters. All sauce. Braço Ultra. Drawing the face from really dynamic angles, like from below, were really big things that I struggled with when I was starting out. First tip would be to plan ahead. You want to decide what the camera angle will be, all of that. This applies to everything across the board when you're drawing from really dynamic angles. In this case, we already decided that we're going from below and we're going to be tackling all the struggles and obstacles that come with that. We're going to figure out the expression. We're going to figure out how steep the angle is going to be. Is wind blowing? Where's the character facing? What are they doing with their body? Are parts of their body actually going to be blocking the view? All of that, you kind of want to have that answered. Just before we continue here, I partnered up with HelloFresh to bring this video to you. The good people at HelloFresh sent me a box and I love it. Hopefully you guys know me. I'm not going to say or endorse anything I don't actually like. I think this works very well, especially for 2020 with all the craziness going on. You don't have to go to the store or anything like that. You can skip the shopping and all the meal prepping and stuff like that, and then get meals with the right proportions for you or your family. Get like pre-proportioned ingredients and chef curated recipes delivered right to your door. All you have to do is follow the easy instructions to cook and enjoy. Go all food wars in your house, no problem. Regardless of your cooking skill or cooking level, they try to make it fun and easy to make, and they still come out delicious. HelloFresh offers so many recipes for you to choose from each week. It can even help you break out of a recipe rut. There's something for everyone. Low calorie, vegetarian, family friendly recipes each week. You have the option to pick with fresh, high quality ingredients every week. Over 90% of the ingredients are sourced directly from growers to ensure the freshest recipes are delivered to your door. It can save you a lot of time, cuts out any stressful meal planning, trips to the grocery store. Even cooking it takes about 30 minutes. Hell, some of them 20. I like how it's flexible to my lifestyle and just has food come straight to me. As you know, doing all this comic stuff, I'm usually sitting down all the time. I try to get some exercise, and then doing food, that takes time away from all the work that I have to do. So this kind of makes things a whole lot easier for me. Easy to change your delivery days and food preferences. Skip a week anytime you want. I'm just amazed that you can be a novice and still make it work. Like the pictures that you see for the meals are literally how it comes out on the plate, if you do it right. And it's hard to do it wrong because the directions are easy. So if you want to support the channel and try out HelloFresh, please use my code WHYTMANGA80, WHYTMANGA 80, or use my link in the description to get 80% off, including free shipping on your first box. Shout out to my girl for being a chef. Now continuing back with tip 1, just like anything, it's kind of like a concept phase, but here you are sorting everything out, doing all the thinking, getting it out of the way, so when it comes down to executing, you have a free mind. So the second tip would be what I like to call the circle technique. And here I'm just using circles of different shapes and sizes, some more oval than others, to just figure out the positioning of certain things like the skull, the cheeks, the ear, and then form everything else from there with a few guidelines. We have the cross circle to show the skull or like that top area of the head, and then we have more horizontally shaped ovals to let us know where the cheeks are going to be. And these are just me using these circles to figure out where the positionings of the parts of the face are going to be. So one for the skull, where the cheeks are going to be, eventually we figure out where the ears are going to be, and maybe even a line kind of letting us know how the neck is going to be positioned. Because once you have these positions figured out, you can then go in with detail later. You can see the arrows at the top kind of letting us know where these heads are going to be positioned. This way I'm giving you guys more variety on how to draw the face from below, but at different angles, all still below. We have a smaller oval for the ear, this time a little more vertically shaped, and then there's like a line where all these circles kind of meet, letting us know how the neck is going to be positioned. Depending on the angle, we get to see both ears, but in some cases we only see one. And that's something we'll kind of go over a little bit as we go forward in the video. Then from the circles, you kind of form the cheeks and then curve it into the jaw and how it connects to where all the circles kind of meet. And it all starts from the ear and it kind of connects like so. Then you add lines forming the back of the head, and the more profile the camera angle is, the more of the back of the head we get to see. But for the character looking straight at us, we're not going to see the back of the head. Then you can have the typical cross guidelines letting us know where the character is facing. And then from the point at which the cross actually meets, we can then form the nose. And again, based off of the angle we're looking from, we can form the bridge of the nose. We know where the under of the nose is going to be because the camera is below. In this case, depending on your style, you're going to see more nostril. And this is where we kind of still use, simple shapes, in this case, a circular shape or oval shapes, to figure out where everything else is going to be positioned, like the eyes, the mouth, and the list goes on. Tip 3 would be the blocked parts. So sometimes when the camera is looking from below, and sometimes, other dynamic angles, certain parts of the face will be blocked off. And I used to have this bad habit of wanting to draw every single thing on the face and make sure we saw 2 eyes and 2 nostrils and all of that, and both ears and all of that. But because of the angle, some parts of the face will be blocked. So if the camera that we're viewing from is from below and maybe shifted a little bit to one end, one side of the eye would be blocked at least a little bit, depending on how steep the angle is, will be blocked by the nose. Maybe we may not see one ear, and maybe the position of the ear will be lower. All these things are things you need to keep in mind and probably get used to, especially if you've made the error before. You're kind of studying your past errors so you don't make them again. Things get blocked from time to time, similar to, foreshortening. We figured out all the positionings of things, and at that point it's easy to then morph that character or transform that character into what we're going for here with Bakugo. But when it comes to parts being blocked, you can see that his nose is actually blocking part of his eye, at least the eye on the left. Depending on the style and the angle, is actually going to block it completely, but because of how things are positioned here, because of the shape of the character's face and the style that's being used, it's not blocking it too much. But moving forward, say with the last head, you'll see that it'll block it a lot because the angle is different and is making the headshot seem a little more profile. But still, in this case, because we figured out all the hard parts, we know where everything is positioned for the most part, with besides a little tweaking here and there, we can just add details and have this character look as we want. And since we're going for Bakugo, it's easy to just transform this to Bakugo. Tip 4 would be to keep in mind that art styles matter. So in some cases, depending on the art style you're working with, there's certain angles that might even maybe be easier to execute than others, but because of the art style, maybe there might be some cases where you would have to render some things more so than others. It's just something to keep in mind. So for instance, with this My Hero Academia style, it's rare you see younger characters with nostrils. So even though the camera is from below, we're supposed to see both nostrils, right? But there are certain characters in My Hero that, you're just not gonna show that for. So it's really up to you what you do, and you need to make those decisions. Some styles don't lend themselves strongly to dynamic angles, especially the very two-dimensional, cartoony cartoons. But if the cartoon is something really out there, really dynamic, then you're in a good place. But even then, with some art styles, drawing from tough angles are easier than others. I can imagine an art style where everybody's nose is a dot, right? So it will kind of be either a really tough challenge to figure out how to draw that from below, or it's just going to be really easy because it might be a dot again anyways. The 5th tip is just having a better understanding of the facial structure of the character you're putting together. Once you understand where the bumps go, how they smile, all their expressions, what parts of their face kind of move or make bumps, where the folds go and wrinkles and things like that, it'll just help your thought process when putting the character together, drawing from below. We're not going to get to see the other ear as much, but in some cases maybe you would, but keep in mind, and depending on how it's protruding out, you might not see it at all. And the jaw kind of does a little tiny rainbow because the angle here we're looking at this character from is a little steeper. And then I'm erasing and fixing things a little bit because I know that line that's showing like the back of the neck is going to be a little bit behind the ear. I already know where the nose is going to be based off of experience. I already know that that eye is going to be lower down. I've used the guideline enough. I've drawn faces like this from this angle so many times. I have built some confidence to draw it without those guidelines, and that's kind of what you want to be doing. I've made the upper part of the head a little smaller because there's some perspective going on, and the cheek side to pop out a little more. Under the jaw is going to be shaded a whole lot more to really sell what's going on there and have it not look awkward. So there are a lot of things to keep in mind when putting this together. The 6th tip would be to have the eraser as your friend and just morph the whole thing. If you feel like some parts don't look as right, feel free to kind of move things around until they do, especially in that sketch phase. Use the sketch phase to the best of your abilities. Again, it's kind of like in the concept side of things where you're kind of thinking, yes, some of that kind of pulls into the execution phase of things, and feel free to use the eraser or Control Z when appropriate and move things around. As you see me drawing here, I'm no longer using the guidelines because the guidelines are there to guide you until you no longer need guidance. And so when I draw, I don't always have the guidelines, as you can see. So as a result, I can morph things around. So even though I draw the overall shape of the head, I know that that top part of the head right above the cheek with, you know, the forehead and the top part of the skull, that part's going to be much smaller and the cheeks are going to have to bump out a little bit. And there's also some perspective going on. So to a degree, I'm keeping in mind that there is some perspective there. And as the drawing goes up, even ever so slightly, it's becoming smaller because it's going at a distance based off of the camera being from below. So always take a step back, look at the character, and morph things around, squeeze things, think of the whole thing in a three-dimensional sense, and make adjustments. In here we see Endeavor is a really muscular guy, so some parts of the chest are going to be blocking that obviously upper part of, or at least the top part of his shoulders. We don't get to see that, and that's another thing to keep in mind. Is blocked part, and in some cases it works actually easier than you're trying to make it. For example, here I'm going to draw an oval shape, and then we'll do the rainbow thing for the draw again because the angle's really steep and we have the ears really low. Keep in mind that the ears are really low when you're drawing characters from below, at least humanoid characters. We're not going to get to see the forehead as much as we would have if we were looking at the character straight on. We're not going to get to see the top of the head clearly. Here I'm already kind of mapping out where the nose, or at least the under part of the nose, is going to be, because the bridge of the nose is going to be much shorter. Then I know where the eyes are going to be. They're almost going to be at the same level with the bridge of the nose and, you know, the tip, where we then get to see underneath the nose. So here, just playing around, erasing if you have to, but just figuring where everything is going to be positioned. Obviously, I'm not using the guidelines as much because I've done this so many times. If the mouth is open, we get to see more of the upper teeth than the lower for obvious reasons, but because of the My Hero Academia style, we always still somehow get to see at least a little bit of the lower teeth. That's just a stylistic thing. So you need to figure out what works for you. Shading underneath the jaw to help sell it even further, but that also depends on the lighting. If the lighting is coming from underneath, the shading under the jaw is going to be minimal. So it depends. You need to almost do a whole other study on the, you know, how things are lit and how to shade and things like that. And then for the most part, this is done. We just start to figure out everything else. You know, where he's looking, eyebrows, they'll be much higher. You know, depending on the expression, the hair going crazy. Obviously, we're not seeing the top, but depending on how crazy the hair is, we're still going to see a lot of hair. Tip 7, similar to understanding the facial structure and morphing, if the character kind of opens their jaw, for instance, the face kind of moves. So if the face is moving and say the character is yelling and you want to see the face from below, that kind of changes things a bit. As you can see with this drawing, his mouth is not that wide open, so his jaw is still pretty relatively default. So because the angle is so steep, that part of his jaw is almost doing a little rainbow again. If not straight, but just kind of curved just a little bit, like a tiny rainbow around the jaw area, and the ears are so low, right? Because that's what would happen. That's how it would look. Even though it doesn't look normal, if you're looking at the character head on, the ears would be on the side. But here, the jaw kind of goes up and does a tiny rainbow. But if the character was screaming or yelling, and it will kind of be back to normal if the camera wasn't as steep. But it's still steep, it's just that the jaw is wide open. And so it just looks like a longer face, and then there's more room for perspective. So those are things to keep in mind. Same goes for has a swelling on the face, or some parts have been like wounded or blown away. It depends. Tip 8 would be to kind of have everything relative to seeing it with the full body. So in some cases, to really nail it, maybe you might want to draw the whole body and draw like a mannequin first, and then you can add layers onto it, whether it be adding the muscles or the clothing or things like that. Kind of thinking in steps and thinking in layers. It can help your original thinking, that initial thought process of the positioning and where everything goes, where you're planning ahead, basically back to tip 1. In some cases, drawing the full body can help give you a better idea of how the head should be. Depending on what the body is doing, it can also let you know what parts of the body are going to block parts of the face. If the camera's from below, maybe an arm might block part of the face or part of the viewer because of the pose. Tip 9. Sometimes shading can add some sauce, especially, if the characters are looking down, the camera angles from below, and maybe they're looking at some really bright light source. The way you shade it can really sell part of the expression. It can just sell a lot of emotion within the scene. So here we're shading all of his forehead, we're shading the bridge of the nose, we shade maybe a little bit underneath his eyes, just a little bit, and you just need to keep all those kind of things in mind. Trying to do the same thing for Hawks here. With glasses, I shade, I do everything, but usually at the edge of the glasses I always leave some kind of white gap. It just helps sell that, he's wearing goggles or whatever. And you shade the bridge of the nose, you shade a little bit under the eye, you shade all of the forehead, and in some cases you shade right above the lip. You shade a lot of the top areas, like on top of the hair, and really, you have some really cool lighting. As we go into the next tip, I'll play around with the shading and maybe do something different. And the final tip will be to practice. There is no magic with this, guys. You always have to put your hours in. Use reference if you have to, but just keep in mind that you're studying the reference and using the reference to kind of learn from it. Make all your errors and try to make sure you don't make them again the next time. Draw with reference, maybe tweak things a little bit. Trace if you have to in the beginning, but again, the whole purpose is to not need to use any of these things again. As you saw with the Hawks drawing, or the Endeavor drawing, I didn't use guidelines, and that's because I've done this over and over and over, and I'm kind of used to drawing it so much that I've built a kind of confidence. These tips and using them and other guidelines are just there for you to build confidence, and then over time you no longer need to use those guidelines. Anytime you see a pose you like, especially a camera angle from below, try to store that in some way and try to learn from it. Study it, whether it's real life or another comic, study it, draw it, and try to remember it so you can draw it again without reference, because that's the whole point. And try to get yourself to a point where you can draw it without looking and still be at least 90% accurate. And that comes with repetition of drawing that same pose over and over. And when you build confidence, you can kind of make certain tweaks to it. Almost form your own, but based off of what you've learned from your studies and your references. Basically practice, reference, experiment, mix and match all the tips together, and then you should be on the right track. Let's recap here for something super steep with my style. We have the circle that has the cross. We have the more horizontal oval right there to tell us where the cheek is. The other one to tell us where the ear is. And then we just use that to connect the dots. The nose here, because of how steep the angle is really pointed out. So we see a lot of the nostril, see a lot of the bridge. It's almost forming its own triangle shape at the top. The eyes are towards to the side and a little lower down. And you shade underneath the jaw, and then after that we just keep tweaking it. I didn't really like how the nose came out. We're going to adjust that a little bit. If she has some boobs, the boobs are going to block parts of it. So this is me using a lot of those tips. Give it a little smirk. We see more nostril, more upper lip than lower lip. The ears are really low, and this is just how I kind of work when I want to create an angle that I want, that I like. And then sometimes the shading, like I said, can help. So we just used all the tips real quick, and voila. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the videos. For the 2.5 people that made it to the end of the video, thank you. Plus ultra to you too. Hope you enjoyed all the sauce. Don't forget to like, leave a comment if you have any questions, and then United States to smash that subscribe button. Hit that bell so you stay notified each time we upload absolutely anything. Turn on all notifications. Again, don't forget to check out HelloFresh. Shout outs to them for partnering with me to bring this video to you guys. Check out some of my other videos. I have cool stuff, tutorials, fun art challenges, the list goes on. Stuff about my own comic, Apple Black, published and serialized on Saturday AM. It's Whyt Manga, and I'm out.